Welcome to episode 141 of the No More Wasted Days podcast. I'm your host, Sara, and today I'm going to be telling you all about a wedding that I recently went to. I did it all sober, and I have a ton of stories to share with you, but with each story, I also have a strategy to share, and it's something either I implemented or I learned from this experience. I'm super excited to share this with you because I can tell you that when I went to this wedding, I thought, I am going to be an observer. I'm going to be somebody who can come out of this still being alcohol-free because I was nervous. Even after 6 years of being alcohol-free on my journey, I was still thinking, can I do this? But I kept thinking, I know I can do it. I know I've got this. And I know I'm going to learn things from it, and then I can share it with my podcast audience. So I'm really excited to share this with you today because this is something I was afraid of when I first quit drinking. It was kind of funny because I was so like, how am I going to do weddings without alcohol? And I'll be real with you, I'm older. I'm not in the age range where I'm getting invited to a lot of weddings. So I would kind of laugh at myself when I would freak out about it. But recently my brother-in-law did get married and the wedding was beautiful. It was amazing. And I'm so happy that I was 100% present the whole time. There were some challenges during the wedding, some things that I had to help with. And I'm so glad I was able to do that because I was 100% sober. So I could be there and be supportive. Now, if you're not going to a wedding anytime soon, please don't feel like this episode isn't for you. You can apply all of these tips and strategies to any socializing event. You can apply it to going out on the weekend with your friends for dinner. So please stick around and listen because this is something that I know people struggle with working with my day makers and the members of my Push to 100. When they have a social event coming up, there is a lot of stress and anxiety leading up to that event as it gets closer and closer. And these are all strategies that I share with them as well. So I know that this is something that we all can learn from. Before we dive all the way into this topic, I want to invite you to download my alcohol-free checklist. If you are brand new to your alcohol-free journey, or even if you've been on it for a little while, this checklist is going to set you up with all of the tools and strategies you need to be successful. This is one of my most downloaded free resources, and I hear a lot of people say it is super helpful. So if you have not downloaded this free resource yet, just head to the link in the show notes of this episode and download your checklist today so you can start your journey with confidence. So I have 3 stories that I'm going to share with you from this wedding. And like I said before, each story will come with what I learned from it and a tip for you that you can take into your alcohol-free journey moving forward. And then I also have some big picture strategies that I'll share with you at the very end of the episode. So be sure to stick around because this one is going to be packed with tips and strategies and maybe one that you want to save so you can listen to it in the future right before you're on your way to a socializing event. All right, the first story I have for you is the drink options. Now, I knew going into this because this was my brother-in-law and future sister-in-law getting married. So I had some behind the scenes intel going into this. I knew they had hired a bartender. And I knew there were going to be drink options as well as beer and wine. I also knew that I could bring in my own drinks. I could bring in beverages if I wanted to. And me and my husband talked about it, but I decided I'll be fine. If they have some drinks, then I'll be able to have the bartender make mocktails as well because they'll have the mixers. So as soon as the bar opened, I went up. The bartender nicely told me all of the signature cocktails that were available. And I let him know, well, I actually don't drink. So what options do you have for me then? And he said, oh, I have Coke and Diet Dr. Pepper. Not that Coke and Diet Dr. Pepper aren't great, but my heart sank. Like I was really looking forward to getting a mocktail. And I kind of looked at the drink options and I was like, oh, okay. And I was kind of taken back. So I didn't have a plan when it first happened. So I just said, okay, well, I'll take a Coke. I was with my kids. They both had a Coke too. We were good to go. We sipped on our Coke. And then I thought, on the next one, I looked at the drink options that they had. I'm going to have him make me a sparkling soda with grapefruit juice and lime juice because I saw all of those ingredients and I was like, I can get this done. So I go up to order my next drink and he's like, another Coke. And I said, actually, I would love to have a sparkling water with some grapefruit juice and lime juice. And he said, I can't make that for you. Those are only for the people drinking alcohol. I felt defeated. I felt upset. I felt mad. I was like, really? I even told him, can't you just make the next person's drink a double on me? And he was like, once we run out of all these supplies, we're out of these drinks. So unfortunately, I can't do that for you. And I was not even asking for all of the fancy garnishes. This wasn't even all of the ingredients for a drink. So I was bummed. And then later on, I saw my husband, who was one of the groomsmen, and he had a mocktail. And I said, how did you get that? The bartender wouldn't make me one. And he was like, what? And he was irritated for me. So he actually went up and got me a mocktail, and it was all taken care of. And the thing is, I didn't need this. They had lemonade once the dinner service opened. They had water, they had Coke, they had Diet Coke. It was just the whole, I wanted a glass like all of the adults had. I didn't like walking around with the plastic cup with the soda like all of the kids had. It made me feel like an outsider. So I was really happy when I got my glass. I held on to that glass and I kept refilling it with Coke and Diet Dr. Pepper after that. But it was just kind of let me know that a mocktail makes me feel like I'm fitting in. It doesn't make me feel like a spotlight's being put on me. But next time, I'm going to plan ahead. If I know I can bring my own non-alcoholic drinks, I'm going to do that. I tell my day makers to do that. I tell my members of my Push to 100 to do that. And I didn't do it myself. So I was not prepared. And that's something that I need to remember for next time. And I want you to remember it as well. Always be prepared. Bring your own cooler of non-alcoholic drinks. I usually do. If I'm going out with friends, I always have a cooler of non-alcoholic drinks. But I just figured since there was going to be a bar, I was going to be taken care of. Another thing that I could have done was I could have communicated with the host. Since it happened to be my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, I could have said, hey, can we make sure that there's also spindrifts or there's this? Or I could have even said, can I bring some non-alcoholic options just to make sure that that was appropriate? And I could have even brought enough for other people, right? I could have made it my offering to the wedding. Now, if you're not close to the host, this day is not your day, right? That was something I had to keep telling myself. This day is not my day. I can't get upset over silly things. This is all about my brother and sister-in-law, not about me. But if you're close, communicate with the host beforehand. Don't do it on the day. That would be really tacky. And the last thing I want you to remember is this reframe. The drink in your hand does not define your experience. And I had to tell myself that a lot. I also had to remind myself that nobody was watching me. Nobody was paying attention to what the drink in my hand was. All right, so the second thing I want to tell you about is the dance floor. I love dancing. If you watch me on TikTok or on Instagram, you know I love dancing. I have haters that say they hate my dancing. I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it forever. I love moving to music. So I was excited. I was not too nervous about getting out there and dancing without alcohol. But imagine my surprise when I finally was out there dancing that I felt awkward AF. For whatever reason, I again felt like there was a spotlight on me. Everybody's watching the lady who's sober. None of them knew I was sober. None of them, by that point, people were drinking, so they weren't thinking about me at all, right? But in my mind, I felt like people are watching me. People are wondering if I'm going to have fun and dance without alcohol. But I pushed those thoughts down and I danced anyway. I danced like no one was watching because nobody was. And if they were probably like, that lady's having a great time. They probably weren't like, oh my God, she's a really bad dancer. Oh my God, she'd be a better dancer if she was drinking. No one was thinking those things. It was only kind of in my head. And once I moved past that, everything was fine. So how are you going to handle the dance floor the next time you're at a social event and people are dancing? If you like dancing. If dancing is out of character for you, maybe this one isn't for you. You can apply these tips to other things as well. What I want you to remember is that the discomfort is temporary. Confidence grows the longer you're alcohol free. And it really does. Like, I was not nervous at all to get up there and head to the dance floor. It was kind of like once I was on it, I was having these little thoughts and they didn't disrupt me all that much. They were like little blips for me, like everybody's watching me. And I'd be like, no, they're not. And if they are, it's because your dress is totally awesome. That's why they're watching you. So I was able to talk to myself in that way. And I just want you to know that you're going to get yourself there as well. If you're feeling like, I'm never going to dance again, I always needed my liquid courage to get on the dance floor, that is not the truth. And I also want you to anchor into your why. One of the reasons why I choose not to drink is because I want to show up authentically and I want to make real memories. One of the memories I wanted to make at this wedding was dancing. I wanted to remember dancing with my kids, dancing with my husband, dancing with my brother and sister-in-law. I wanted to remember all of these things. And I was like, so I'm going to make this happen. So I'm going to make this memory my truth. I also visualized before I went to the wedding. I visualized myself dancing. And when it happened, I had visualized it so many times that it was easier. I've said it before on this podcast, but it is always worth repeating. When we visualize things in our brain with great detail, our brain thinks that they already happened. So that way, when we go to do the real thing, your brain isn't as nervous. Your brain's going, oh, we already did this. We've been at a wedding before and we've danced and we had a great time. If that's what you visualized, that is what's going to happen. So the next time you have a social event coming up, I want you to visualize before you socialize. I have a whole video on this in my 30-day alcohol-free challenge, and it is so important. And I have so many people tell me I always visualize before I socialize. It helps so much. If you have time, do it a few times before you're there, even if it's just going out to dinner. I want you to look up the menu to visualize. I want you to think about what you're going to order to drink. I want you to visualize yourself ordering your drink in front of your friends with confidence. Even if it's an unsweetened iced tea, you're going to have so much confidence when you order that drink. I want you to visualize drinking that drink and it giving you a little boost of energy because it's got a little caffeine in it, and you just having fun, making authentic, real memories that you will remember with your friends. When we visualize in this way, our brain, again, thinks it already happened. And that way, when it really does happen, it's easier. And I also want you to know that every time you do an activity without alcohol, like socializing, it is practicing. It's getting easier. Telling myself things like this on my alcohol-free journey has been so beneficial. This was not my first alcohol-free wedding. It was actually my second. So I knew I could do it. I was like, I've already done this before, and I already know that weddings can be super fun without alcohol. But I was still kind of nervous because it was a few years ago. But having that knowledge from my past helped me go into this with confidence. I'm also the same when I go out to dinner with friends. I know it's going to be fine because I've done it before. If I'm going over to a friend's house where I know the host drinks, I know it's going to be fine because I've done it before. But I only have that knowledge because I have put myself in the situations alcohol-free, and I know I can succeed. Now, I'm not saying get out there and do it even if you don't feel ready. I made sure that I felt ready anytime I did one of these activities. If I was feeling shaky, I either let my husband know and we would talk it out, or I didn't go. I didn't go until I was totally ready. And I want you to remember that with socializing without alcohol, you have to feel ready. But when you do, look at it as a way to grow that muscle in your alcohol-free journey. It's going to get easier and easier every single time you do it, but put yourself out there when you're ready, do it, and you will be so proud that you did. All right, my last story is all about observing drunk guests. Now, this is not about throwing shade to people that were drunk at the wedding. I expect there to be drunk people at a wedding. This was more about my observations and it holding a mirror up to my past behavior and kind of going, that used to be me. That used to be my world. And I got to tell you, I felt okay with my choice to be alcohol-free. I feel like sometimes we romanticize alcohol and we feel like, oh my gosh, we're never going to get that back. These people were having fun, but I could see that the next day they were not going to be having fun. I could also see that some of them were not going to clearly remember the next day. Now, not everybody was drunk at this wedding, right? There were some people who were just tipsy. They were having fun. Maybe those people I could have been like, oh, I feel like I wish I had that story. I wish I could be a person that was tipsy at a wedding. I no longer have that battle in my brain. I know I'm not the person who can just get a little tipsy. I'm the person that gets real drunk. And I saw a whole range of emotions. I saw one person crying because they were so drunk, and their other friend that had been drinking, giving them a slurred speech pep talk. And I thought, oh God, I don't know which of those ladies I would have been, but I could have been one of those ladies. I saw a poor lady have to go use the restroom and she looked like she needed help. I thought about offering help to her, And by the time I got out of the restroom and it was her turn, she was gone. So I wasn't able to offer my sober services. But I was honestly thinking, I can help some of these people if need be, right? And I got to witness one person where I swear they looked at me and they weren't really talking to me. They were talking to someone else, but they made kind of eye contact with me. But then it was like their eyes were going in different directions. And that was the person where I thought, that used to be me. And she thought she was having the most deep conversation. And from my past experience, I remember being that person. And I would not remember my deep conversations that I had with people the next day. And I would always wonder, did I say something stupid? Did I look stupid? And I'm just so happy that I don't have to have that level of guessing what happened the night before. And seeing this didn't make me feel sorry for these people. I know everybody's on their journey where they're supposed to be. And I also don't know everybody's story. This could be a one-time thing for these people. They go to a wedding, they cut loose. For me, that was my truth every single weekend. And seeing it was a reminder for me. And it was able for me to have a gratitude moment and just think, I'm so glad that's not my story anymore. And I'm glad I was able to change it. So please don't take this in a way where I'm saying that I'm better than people who drink. I'm just saying that a lot of times it can feel uncomfortable to people who are on their alcohol-free journey when they see people who are drinking. And it is not because they don't like drunk people, right? I can say that being around a lot of drunk people is not the most fun place to be when you're sober. Luckily, I had other people who were not drunk that I was around, so that was just fine. But I will just say that if you notice somebody who's sober and they seem uncomfortable around drinking people, it is probably because that mirror is being held up to their past behavior. Or if you are feeling uncomfortable, that's probably why. So just sit in that, use it as a moment to reflect and be grateful that this is not your story anymore. Use this moment as a reinforcement of why you quit. And I never want the focus to be on judging other people. I want you to instead shift the focus back to your own joy, conversations that you actually remember, being fully present at these events, and waking up without regret. So those are my stories that I have for you, my observations from this sober wedding that I attended. I will say that I had like 2 people offer me weed when I told them I don't drink. And that was hard because I didn't want to go into the like, oh, I actually don't do THC products either. And I knew that I was really, really close to hitting my 1-year mark at that wedding. It was just kind of strange and not something that I was expecting. And I guess that could have been another way that I want you to be prepared. What are you going to do if somebody offers you a drink? Now, obviously for me, it happened to be weed. It was a different thing. I had somebody be like, oh, I have an edible in my car if you want it. And I was like, oh, no, thanks. I'm good. Like I was able to just say, no, thanks. I'm good. And I do think it's because I have practiced with drinking. I have practiced saying that when people ask me if I want a drink. Like, oh, can I get you a drink? Yeah, I'll just have the Coke. I have practiced saying those things. And I want you to do that too. That is part of having a plan. And that's my first big picture strategy that I'm going to share with you. I'm actually going to have 4 of these quick strategies for the end. And the first one is have a plan. Know how you're going to respond when you're offered a drink. And I actually want you to practice what you're going to say in a mirror. Have your husband ask you if you're going to have a drink tonight. Actually do some role playing. It might feel kind of weird, but it'll be really helpful when the time comes. So have a plan. How are you going to respond? For me, it's always very simple. No thanks. I'm actually not drinking tonight. I have to be the driver. Nobody knows that my husband's also not drinking. They're not going to ask the whole story. But also know what you're going to say if you do have friends that you think are going to have some pushback. Maybe it's something like, no, I'm doing a 30-day alcohol-free break right now, or sorry, I really want to, but tomorrow I have this really important appointment that I have to be fully prepared for. Or maybe you just want to say, no, sorry, unfortunately, I'm taking medication and it interferes with it, so I can't do that right now. Most of the time, people aren't going to ask about that because it's almost kind of like, oh, I wonder what she's taking. I wonder why. So that one can be a one to just make people stop really fast. But I have found that most times you can just say, no thanks, I'm not drinking tonight. And it's not as big of a deal as you think it's going to be. But just have that plan, have the conversation, practice before you go into it. I also want you to remember to stay connected. If you can, go with a sober buddy. If not, have somebody you can text if you need to. Like, I could have texted my daymakers when I didn't feel like there was a good non-alcoholic option. I could have gotten right in there and been like, oh my gosh, guys, I'm at this wedding. The only NA options are Coke and Diet Dr. Pepper. I know I'm not going to drink, but this is just awkward. And I thought there were going to be more fun options. And then I could even say, can't wait to tell you the full story after it's all over. Just so then I can remember, like, I'm going to tell them about the bartender being like, no, I can't make you the drink. But if you are able, go with a sober buddy. I always have my husband with me. Well, I don't always have my husband with me. We're not connected at the hip. But I know I had my husband at this event. I knew he was going to be sober. I also knew a lot of people that don't drink a lot that were going to be there. I knew people that do drink a lot that were going to be there. I leaned on the people that didn't drink a lot. I hung out with them. I had good conversations. And one of the cool things about being parents to teens is that I had my teenagers with me. I had my kids with me, and they were my sober buddies. They didn't really know it, but they were there. And it was also kind of interesting to see all of this through their eyes. This was the first time both of them had seen really drunk people since I quit drinking. And I quit drinking when they were 8, so they don't have a lot of vivid memories of it. And I think they were like, whoa, I didn't know that that's how drunk people sounded. I didn't know that's how drunk people acted. It was kind of a cool connection that I made with my kids. I don't know if that's the right word, but it was definitely a memory that we all created together. But my kids were my sober buddies. They didn't need to know that. I didn't need to tell them. But even they were like, man, it's only Coke and Diet Coke. Is there anything else to drink? So it was nice to have them to lean on. The next thing I want you to do, if you are able, I was not able to do this at this wedding, is set time boundaries. You don't have to stay until 2 a.m. You can leave when it stops feeling fun. You can head home when the people get too drunk. Now, why wasn't this an option for me at this wedding? Because my husband was one of the groomsmen and there was a little bit of takedown after the wedding was over. So we had to help take down a lot of decorations and get them into our car and help out in that way. So that meant we were there till the very end. And even my husband drove the bride and groom off to their Airbnb for the night. So he was even there just a little bit later than me. Now, I will say I wasn't totally privy to this information before it all started, and I wish I would have had some more comfortable shoes for the cleanup, but it all worked fine. And I'm really glad we were able to support my brother and sister-in-law, because it was actually, even though I was a little bit cranky as it was going on because my feet hurt, I didn't show that. I kept it in, but it was actually really cool to know I'm sober. I can help out with this. I wasn't feeling crankiness because this was ruining my buzz and I wanted the party to keep going. I was more feeling cranky because my feet hurt. And that was my own problem. But it was actually nice to be able to help. But if you can, I do want you to set that time boundary. I want you to know that it is okay to leave before the party officially ends. And my last big picture strategy for you when it comes to a big socializing event without alcohol is to set up some self-care for the next day. Celebrate your win with something that you love. Maybe it's a special breakfast. Maybe you go out on a hike. Maybe you take the day to journal and reflect. Do something that you wouldn't have been able to do if you were drinking, something that you would have been too hungover to do. I couldn't go on hikes the day after drinking. I was way too hungover. I definitely wouldn't have taken myself out for breakfast or made a special breakfast because I was eating toast and Gatorade and maybe a little bit of coffee. I was eating bare minimum when I would first wake up after the day of drinking. And at the end, I was probably having a mimosa as well, just to make the hangover stop. So actually change the ritual. What's going to happen the next day? And this is going to solidify a new pattern for you. Your brain is going to start seeing like, okay, maybe at weddings or big socializing events, I have moments where I feel awkward. I have moments where I don't get the drink that I really want. Or I have to be around drunk people and kind of have this emotional response to it because it's shining the light back in my past. Yes, those are uncomfortable things. But the next day, I get to wake up and do whatever I want to with the day. I had to wake up the next day and actually pack and go home because the wedding was out of town for me, but I did get to do a kickoff call with my Push to 100 members that evening, and I was sober. I didn't have a hangover, so I was able to do that. I was also able to get all packed up and we could head out of town. My husband and I even had to run over to my father-in-law's old house and take down some shelves and bring them home in the morning. I was able to do all that because I didn't have a hangover. So maybe it wasn't self-care, right? But I was able to see, hey, I'm able to keep my life going now because I chose not to drink last night. And that was not my story when I was a drinker. My life would have been shut down for the day, or I would have had to have done all those things, and it would have been terribly uncomfortable and awful. I'm so glad that this has changed now for me. And I know that I didn't really get to do self-care the next day, but I will tell you that a lot of times now, the day after Thanksgiving, I plan a hike because I was usually down and out the day after Thanksgiving. So I do celebrate with self-care. I do the same thing on New Year's Day. I make sure that we're going to do something fun as a family on that day because New Year's Day used to be spent with a hangover. So I want you to think of those things too. This is really good to remember as we're getting into holiday season as well. So I hope that me sharing my stories from my wedding observations are very helpful for you. I want you to know that weddings can be hard without alcohol, but they are 100% doable, and I'm proof. This is my second wedding, so I've been able to do it, and I know you can too. I also want to reassure you that each time it does get easier, and the freedom and clarity are totally worth it when it comes to socializing at big events without alcohol. I also want to remind you to download that alcohol-free checklist that I talked about at the top of the episode. It's going to set you up with those strategies and tools that you need to feel successful on your alcohol-free journey. And if you haven't already, be sure to leave a review or rate this podcast. It is one of the easiest ways to support this podcast, and it's totally free. I want to read a recent review for you, give you a little inspiration of what you might say. This one was from F the Booze. I love that name. It said, excellent. 5-star. I am a guy who really enjoys these wonderful ladies. Episode 24 was the one that hit all the buttons for me, and I have been listening ever since. I'm married, so their female-specific advice is still valued to me as my wife is also in recovery. They have such a relaxing and chill way of sharing their messages. It's a breath of fresh air whenever I need to hear a calming voice. Thank you for all you do and all of the valuable info. Thank you so much, F the Booze, for that review, and be sure to leave your own review if you haven't already, and maybe your review will be featured on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I'll be in your ear in the next one.